Hey guys, welcome to the bonus tutorial for an intro to compositing in After Effects. For this video, we will be solely focusing on the concept of rotoscoping. Let's jump right into it. Now, as you were seeing, there's a lot of issues with trying to key out the shot, right? Especially because if we take a look at the original shot by turning off our effects, the blue from the blue screen had a lot of light shine on our actor's clothes, right? So when we keyed it out, we lost a lot of strong colors in the shot. So chroma keying and keying is not always the strongest method. So a bonus method that we're going to learn quickly right now is another tool that's important to the VFX workflow and the VFX pipeline. We're going to quickly learn about rotoscoping. Now, rotoscoping is another tool that we use to create a matte. So if we open, let's go back to our car interior and let's create a new composition that we're just going to play with. Rotoscoping is basically the idea of going in frame by frame and cutting out the thing we want to create a matte. So for example, we can do this with the mask tool that we were introduced to at the beginning in the first tutorial. But if we select it, we can go like this. If we want to cut out Daniel, right, we add these points, just rough like that for now. And as you can see, boom, we've created a really rough matte. Okay, and this is all that exists now with this layer and the matte. We can drag and drop a background in. Doesn't matter which one. Doesn't look too great that way, but that's okay. Let's undo that. And basically, what we would do from here is keyframe the mask path to then go frame by frame and follow his outline. And this is rotoscoping. It's a painful process doing it this way. So we're not going to do it this way, okay? For the sake of this video, and because After Effects is great, it has a tool called the Rotobrush tool. And the Rotobrush tool is very helpful because it uses the software in itself to find these edges and cut it out for you. It helps you. It makes it a lot easier than trying to do it manually hand by hand. So quickly, to introduce you to this tool, I'm going to select it and double click on our layer. Now from here, we'll again open another window that will have us focusing on this tool, right? If I click the spacebar and drag again, that allows me to move around. If I let go of the spacebar, boom, back to whatever tool I was using. Now, as you can see, it gives me this brush. Basically, if I take the brush and I paint on it, the software will select what color it thinks I'm selecting, or what object. It selects what we want to cut out, and I think for now we're just going to cut out this window. Of course, there's windows back here and the window up here, but let's just cut this out. So I'm just going to undo for now. To change the size of the brush, I will click the command button and click my mouse, and it will scale it up and down. If we go now, frame by frame, if I click command, then the right arrow key goes to the next frame. As you can see, it tries its best to find these edges again and keep it clean. But as we can see, if we take a look here, move up a little bit, it's eating a little bit into the hat. So what we want to do, if we click option, we paint, that'll remove part of the rotoscope that we're creating here. All right, let's keep going frame by frame, taking a look at what's happening. Whoop, as we can see, it dove a little bit deep here, so let's cut that out. But we want to keep that blue, boom. And sometimes you'll really have to play with it to get a matte that you like. So now I'm just going to go through this quickly, through a bit of a time lapse. All right, cool. I got to the last frame, and I roughly just rotoscoped this window out. And what's an important thing that we need to know from here is we don't want the window. We want the window gone, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go up here, and we're going to click Invert Foreground Background. So now everything is selected except the window. And an important thing that I always used to always forget when I would use the Rotobrush tool was to freeze it. Because if we go up here, we see Fine-Tune Rotobrush Matte. So that means that every frame it will be trying to fix it, trying to make it better. And if we leave it without freezing it, it's going to keep trying to improve it, and sometimes that doesn't improve it. It makes it worse. So what we're going to do is freeze it. It'll take a bit to load, but what it will do is it will go through the frames that we rotoscoped, the frames that we rotobrushed with the tool, and just freeze it and hold it and create a definitive matte. It's finished now. Let's go back to our V tool. Let's close this window. And as we can see, we now have a matte layer without the window, right? Now, usually the first frame's not as clean, but it looks pretty good. And the positive with doing this is we didn't lose any color anywhere else. If we go back here, let's actually just go to our other shot. We can actually copy and paste these bottom layers into here. Let's drag it below. And if we take a look, that looks pretty good, right? Now there's a lot of blue, so of course we can refine the matte up in the Effects and Controls window by turning the feather, which feather softens it. See how much it's softening it? We don't want to go too much. otherwise a lot of the blue starts to come back. So I think 10 is good. And sometimes you can see there's hard edges of blue around the edge. So what we can do is shift the edge inward to about -70 may look good. And we remove some of that blue, right? You can see the difference, 0. It's very far out. We undo that. We remove some of that blue. If we add the motion blur as well, because there's a lot of movement, or not too much movement in this shot, but some shots there's a lot more than others, it softens it and makes it even more believable. Now, the rotor brush tool takes a lot of time to render, which is okay for now. But as we see now, we get a nice looking shot. It looks pretty good. It's not as messy, right? We go back to the first one. It's not as dark. It doesn't feel as worked with and as tampered with as when we do it this way. We still keep a lot of the colors. Now, of course, there is still a bit too much blue. So what we can do is go to our effects window and search hue and saturation. We want this here. We drag it onto our top layer. And what I do, click here, right? If we see we're under master saturation, and this works the whole thing, which we don't want. We just want to remove the blue, which this tool is very good for doing that. We go to master, we go to blues, and if we drag it down a bit, takes out the desaturation of the blue a little, which will become more believable. Now, we don't want to go down all the way, because see, there's a lot of blue in the shot. This just takes out the blue a tad. We take a look, it's a little bit different, and we see that these edges become a little bit less blue, which ties it a little bit more to the background. We could also take the Lumetri tool, right? Go back to Lumetri, bring it onto this top layer, and bring back in some warmth so it matches the background. Oh, that already looks even better. Bring the saturation up to 110, and we have a nice looking shot here. We click it, we play it, and it already looks even better without having destroyed all the colors like in this. So now from here, we have final shots. Now when you're doing the rotor brush tool, right, you can do the rest of the blue, but for the sake of the tutorial, I did not do the blue. And if we go back to our folders, our complex composite lesson 3 folder, I gave you 6 different shots that you can play with and try going through it, and some of them will be harder to track than others, so it's just about really trying to experiment and play with it. Like you saw in After Effects with these exported versions, you can really see a major difference between that, which was the chroma keyed version, and this, which is the rotoscope version. Yeah? Now this is a little bit muted, right? I could have probably upped the saturation a little bit more, like we did here, and that would have probably made it look a little better, so I will probably go back and do that for the short film, but we'll see how it goes. What's always most important is when we're using the color correction tool, that we're matching it. Because for example, in this version, it's a lot more muted, a lot more desaturated, but it looks like this shot of the guys in the car matches the background shot. Same thing here. This background is a lot more saturated in this version, but it looks like now that we brought up the saturation, which is the brightness of the colors and the strength of the colors of the shot here, that these guys match it a little bit better. So I hope that was not too complicated of a tutorial. I showed you 2 methods of how we can take this original shot that looks like this and create a car composite. Take out the windows, add a background, and we add the snow, right? And it looks pretty solid. So, I hope you learned something from this tutorial. Key concepts we went over today. We talked about color correction and how changing the colors, especially in this version of the shot, how changing the colors can really help tie everything together even better. And then finally, we talked a little bit, well, I think probably a little more than I should have, but that's okay, about rotoscoping, another method that we can use to create a matte. And 2 ways we can rotoscope, right, are using the pen tool and drawing it frame by frame and keyframing that, or we can use the roto brush tool, which as we saw was fairly simple. We just paint it on and then it selects it for us. If we wanted to remove stuff, we click the option key down, and then now we can subtract from a roto. The thing I want to stress most about when you use the roto brush tool is that you always freeze it. Most important thing. Otherwise it will keep moving. It'll keep changing. Okay, and we don't want that. Alright, I hope you learned something in this bonus tutorial video. If you would like to see a recap of all the topics and concepts we talked about throughout this tutorial series, check them out in the next video. Bye!